and welcome into the Young Dad Podcast. Whether you're outside grilling, mowing the lawn, changing dirty diapers, or maybe, just maybe, you got a moment to sit back, relax, listen to your favorite podcast, whatever you're doing, wherever you're at. Thanks for being here, and thanks for tuning in. Today, we're talking business, we're talking marketing, we're talking entrepreneurship, and the balancing act of fatherhood with it all mixed in. With my guest, Jake, who's built a career on creating and scaling businesses while still making time for family. A marketing agency founder, B2B and healthcare marketing expert, startup veteran, and family man. He spent the last 15 years helping businesses scale, launching successful startups, and learning how to work smarter, not harder, so he can spend more time with the people who matter most. Which is what we all want to do at the end of the day. So in today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about growing and scaling. We're going to talk a little bit about the lessons learned along the way. And of course, how to automate and delegate so you can focus on what matters most. And of course, all mixed in and sprinkled in between the conversation today. We'll have fatherhood, family, and balancing the business grind with real life. So make sure you grab a juice box, grab a snack. Let's jump into the conversation. Jake, welcome to the pod.
Hey, Jay. It's good to be here.
Of course, man. It's good to have you. So you've been in the startup world, built companies, marketed products, managed teams, but at the core of it, you're a family man first. So what's your story? How did you go from startup grind to building a life that works for you and your family?
Well, I started my career the way most do, the traditional sense. I was in asset management for a number of years, and then I tried to start a company. It failed spectacularly, but I got a taste of what it meant to be an entrepreneur. I went back into the corporate world for a number of years, and then from that found my way back into the agency world, where I fell in love with marketing agencies, and I worked at a few of them before starting my own about maybe 9 months ago or so. And the impetus behind all of it is basically the crux of this show, is I want to be able to manage my day to day how I want to. I want to be able to coach teams. I want to be able to drop kids off and pick them up from school. And that's really where my motivation for building a company comes from.
I love that. I love that. So why have you chosen entrepreneurship over a 9 to 5? Yes, there's the perks of that, but I mean, you can work in the family time, things like that, around that schedule, that business, that security, but why entrepreneurship over a 9 to 5 for you?
Oh man, there's so many reasons. I don't even know where to begin. I think you're 100% right. You can definitely build out the life that I'm talking about while working a 9 to 5. I think you can, as long as you have discipline and set proper boundaries, you can have work-life balance. The good thing about not being the boss is that when you clock out at 5 p.m., you're off the clock. I mean, I know the majority of our colleagues who have 9 to 5 jobs don't operate that way. People work more than they have to all the time. But you don't have to worry about work not getting done if you're not doing it, which is a huge challenge with entrepreneurship, especially for me right now. I'm the only partner. If things don't happen, it's on me. It's all on me all the time. I think that uh, you can definitely have the life that I'm talking about with 9 to 5. I chose it mainly because I don't fit into the box of what a typical employee looks like. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners will be able to relate to this. I think I'm smarter than most of the people who I've worked for. I have a really hard time following directions when I don't think that they make sense, or I don't think that they're actually going to achieve the goal that the person is trying to. And I've struggled a lot in my career working in a traditional corporate environment where there's a lot of bureaucracy and red tape, and you ask, why is something done, and your boss just says, oh, that's just how we do things here. And that always just short circuited my brain. I could never get beyond that. And so, I thought working at a startup would be a good way to escape that kind of mentality, and to a certain extent it does, but there's a lot of risk in startups, especially if you don't hold a significant amount of equity. Your upside is capped severely. And startups are nuts. You're always wearing many, many hats. It's always all hands on deck. There's always a crisis, and it's just a challenging environment to work in. So I figured if I'm going to be in that environment, I might as well own all of the upside. It might as well, potentially put me in a position where 5, 10 years from now, I only have to spend a few hours a day working on this, and I get to spend all of my time with my family, with my friends, and on hobbies and working on side projects. So there's many, many more reasons, but those are the biggest ones.
Yeah, no, I hear you. That makes sense. So what's the difference in like the grind then? The grinds of a 9 to 5 versus, taking on the entrepreneurship journey.
Well, like I said, I think that there is a culture. I know that there is this grind culture in the United States. People are obsessed with work, and it's really, especially if you don't own part of the business, it's really misplaced because that loyalty does not go both ways. you're expendable. And I think that we've seen that over and over again, especially over the past 5 years, where we've seen millions of layoffs happen.
Well, I can tell you a story that just happened at my work about being expendable. It's actually a funny story that you bring up right there. So, and I think this is good to highlight kind of exactly what you're talking about here because everybody's expendable in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's the important part to hit on and why the point I want to counter here with that at the same time. So, I was at work. I was last week. So, this is April. This is towards the end of April now. And lady got she was removed, she was fired, I guess. I didn't know what happened. I'm part of our leadership team and whatnot, so I'm just like, what's going on? I didn't even know this was happening, kind of thing. As I was told the story, so the story goes like this, where she was searching on it, she was just scrolling on Indeed, scrolling, who knows why. I think everyone scrolls on Indeed from time to time here in the States just to kind of see what's out there, because there's part of our job culture is also like the jump ship to something better culture, in a year to 2 years, or if you're not like totally happy, just jump ship to the next job rather quickly and just use what you have as a security blanket for now. But then other than that, so she was scrolling and then she saw her job posted, like her current role posted. And so she called up one of our directors and said, "Hey, what's going on? Is this because someone else is coming on, or does this mean something for me?" Director said something along the lines of, "Well, we were going to talk about this tomorrow when you were in," and they had that conversation. And yeah, essentially she accepted her termination, and yeah, they went a different direction. It just goes to show like how important it is to remember, like, you are replaceable. They will replace you rather quickly. I mean, we also had at my workplace, when I first started a couple years ago now, we had someone pass away, like literally die, that was in a job, and then her office was cleared out within a week, and it's just business as usual kind of thing. So that just shows
Yeah.
how expendable you are, which is why it's important. Like, yes, there's this culture here in the States to where it's like work, 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 give your life to your job, life's everything, all these things like that. But it's like, it's really not that important. Like, just work your hours and go home. There's If you don't have to stay extra, just don't stay extra, go. Like, your job's not that important that it's taking you away from all these things in life, kind of thing, right?
Yeah. And I think the crucial end line to that is what never made sense to me is watching these young fathers kill themselves at work for years on end when they're young, and because they want to set themselves up for a good life when they're old, and they miss out on the life that they're working for in the present. You can live that today. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to abandon your family and pour yourself 100% into work today. There is, and maybe you won't be as successful in the long run because you're not making as many sacrifices. But when you hear about the regrets that old men have on their deathbed, they are always around, "I wish that I took more chances, and I wish I spent more time with my family. I regret not being there more." And so you're sacrificing this at the time in your life when you can actually enjoy it the most. And so that's always top of mind for me is, yes, I want to build this company into something that is future proof, that can stand the test of time, that I could potentially hand off to my children. And at the same time, I'm not willing to get that at the expense of quality time spent with my family today.
Yeah. No, that's like the biggest risk versus reward, right? It's like, why sacrifice so much? Why give so much when there's really no point?
But back to your talking about being expendable, I mean, that's another reason why starting a company is great. And for me, it's a service-based business. So unless something catastrophic happened and I lost all of my clients at once, which is extremely unlikely, losing one or two clients isn't going to sink me. I'm not reliant on any individual one for my business to work. And so it provides a lot more safety and a lot less risk than people think. Whereas if you're working a 9 to 5, you're getting healthcare through this company, your entire income from this one entity. And if something happens, you're out of luck.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So it's a different kind of risk, right? And it's not. I don't think it's like traditional risk. I think a lot of people see like going into entrepreneurship as like very risky. So I think what just even start. But what do you have to start? Because this obviously isn't for everybody. Oh, and there's
Yeah.
some misconceptions here. So So, what kind of person, from your experience, does it take to be successful in this space?
Great question. There are so many different archetypes of founders that can be successful. You have the tinkerer or builder, you have the grand visionary, you can have the grinder, the salesperson, you could have somebody on the product side. There are many different types of people who can be successful. So I don't think there's any one specific type of person. I think that if you are like me and you have trouble with authority, you want to kind of beat your own path, you want to be in charge, you want to build a team, that's pretty essential. You need to be comfortable doing things that are risky and trusting your gut. I think that's really important. What do you need though? I think you need to have, beyond a good idea, you need to have a really strong conviction around the idea. You need to you need to understand the market or the problem that you're trying to solve really intimately. It really helps to already be working in that industry and getting paid to do it. And it really helps, even if you're not getting paid to do that specific thing, it really helps to start while you have income coming in and force yourself to quit the job. Work on this thing on the side, nights and weekends, for as long as you can, get it as far as you can until you have no choice but to quit your other job, because you need to live. Uh, if you are a bit older, I shouldn't say age doesn't really matter. If you have dependencies, if you've got a partner who's relying on you or children who are relying on you, then you need to make sure that they're going to be stable. I'm in a really great environment where my wife is picking up most of the slack with an understanding that, we had a very long conversation about what this could mean for our future and why I think it's important that we take this risk together. And she, after discussing it extensively, she was on board, and so she's willing to pick up the slack now, because if this continues to work and we stick to the trajectory, it's going to mean that all of us can work a lot less in the not so distant future. So what do you need? I mean, that's it. And you need to be fearless, and it takes a lot of work. I shouldn't say fearless, because I'm afraid every day. You need to understand that fear is healthy, and understanding that you can be afraid and continue to move forward, understanding that your limiting beliefs are just noise in the back of your head that you can overcome. You got to be really, really mentally strong, because this is not for the faint of heart, and you don't get to just give up and take your ball and go home. You can fail from time to time. I fail all the time. There's lots of days where I get to the end, and it took me a long time to get here, but I get to the end of the day and I said, well, that was a bad day. I didn't get as much done as I wanted to. I had clients who weren't thrilled with what we did. We have service offerings that are falling short of my own very high expectations. We're going to come back tomorrow and do better. Try our best. So I don't know if that answered your question. The only thing you really you need to understand that the only way you truly fail is if you stop. And now there's obviously certain points where you should stop if your business is really not working and you've been grinding at it for years and you don't see an end in sight. There's a certain skill to understanding when you should, fold the company and move on. But the reality is it's not over until you stop working at it. And there can be very legitimate reasons to stop, but as long as you persevere, the company will continue.
I think those are all important qualities, right? And I think it is a big leap. It's a big leap, right? You do have to have that right mindset. You do have to have the right tenacity, the right resiliency, the right mindset, and all those qualities you mentioned as well. I think those are the most important. Like I think mindset's everything here, right? Knowing that, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna work my ass off. I'm gonna get it done. I'm gonna do it, kind of thing. And I think that's where most people who want to do it don't do it. Is right there, because the work that's required to be put in to do it, and then leaving that safety net of their 9 to 5, because they're like,
Yeah.
okay, my 9 to 5 is pretty good, and I can't really complain too much, and I like it enough, kind of thing. Maybe not love it, but I like it enough, and it works. I've been able to make it work for me. In terms of scheduling, things like that. Some days I get off a little early so I can go and do this or that kind of thing. It's flexible, benefits are nice, the perks are good. So I think people are afraid to lose that security, and of course to get out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, rightly
And
so. It's a big sacrifice. I mean, you need to be comfortable, especially if you are qualified enough to be an authority to build a company around something, it likely means that you have a pretty nice income. So you have to be comfortable with giving up, a high quality of life, high income, less responsibility, and take on all of that. It's a hard trade-off, and understand that it's going to be probably, on average, it's like 7 years to an exit for a startup. So are you comfortable with giving up all of your creature comforts, not all, but many of them, and not generating and growing your income over that time to potentially build something that's yours? I think most people are not willing to do that.
Yeah, I think most people aren't willing to chase their dreams either, at the same time. Because we're not just talking about, business, like online businesses, marketing, sales, things like that, right? We're not just talking about that. That's your experience, right? But we're also talking about other businesses outside of that. Restaurants. It feels like there's new restaurants that pop up everywhere every day, new food trucks that pop up, but then all of a sudden those food trucks are gone quicker than they start. There was one just up the road from me. There's this little taqueria food truck. I ate there once just because it never sounded good. Prices were a bit too high for me. I didn't really like the location, but it's fine, right? But then all of a sudden it's just gone. It's just gone. And then another taqueria that I love, absolutely love, they had an unfortunate accident, and then I felt so bad for them because I'm just looking at what happened. So a car had gone through their front windows and their front door, just smashing out the windows of their front of their restaurant. And I just felt so bad. I'm like, how are they gonna rebuild? Kind of thing. Because I've been going here for years, and I remember when the prices were, two was about 2/3 of what they were, or maybe they were a third less. That's what I meant to say. They're about a third less of what they are now, kind of thing. So I've seen how much they've been hit by inflation, prices raising, things like that. Because I've seen how much I've been paying over the past few years at this restaurant. I know how small it is. I know how expensive this little strip mall is. I mean, even a freaking kickboxing gym failed. That was pretty popular right next door. And so many businesses have failed in this little strip, and uh, I just felt so bad because I'm like, that's their entire livelihood there, right? It was one unfortunate accident, who would have devastated their business. I think they were able to recoup most of it through insurance, of course, because that's what you have to have, building insurance, things like that, property insurance. So I think they were able to recoup. But man, I think there's a lot of different dreams that people have out there that they're afraid to chase because they're afraid of being comfortable. Like I love public speaking. I love having a podcast. I love researching and developing different shows, and I've helped some other people launch their shows just by giving them like a few tricks, tips, things like that. It's like, oh, try using this platform. It'll help. Or jump over here and do this. Or I would do it like that. Or I would line it up like this, kind of thing. Having those conversations. And if I was afraid to do that, if I was afraid to do the podcast all together because of one thing, because I have a slight speech impediment, people hear it. People comment on YouTube all the time about it. I think it's hilarious. It's like, oh, look at you trying to hurt my feelings. You're so cute, kind of thing. But it's like, if I cared about that, that could hold me back.
Mm.
But because I don't care about that, I've been able to produce 200 plus episodes of the show. I've been able to reach hundreds of thousands of people. I've been able to literally save multiple lives through this show. But if I was just like, oh yeah, I have speech, I can't do that. I can't chase that want, that desire, that dream because I sound funny, sound like a 4-year-old or whatever. But like that hold me back, man. I'm missing out on a whole lot of my life. And it's like
Yeah,
you
I mean,
said, you can't be afraid to live your life.
you're talking about real deep stuff, and earlier you were talking about the mental game that it takes to overcome. And when I was younger, I really was, I don't know what the right word is. I thought it was all a joke. I thought it was fluff and bullshit, and all of the, and look, there is a lot of malintent, and there's an insidious underbelly to some of this, like self-improvement, self-help, public speaking genre that's just built on fake empowerment to make money and to sell
It's so
books.
much fake
but
out there. There's so much.
but I have gotten very, very interested in DBT and CBT, and getting in touch with emotions and trying to understand where triggers come from, and particularly as it pertains to anger and fear and doubt, and uh, understanding. I kind of touched on this earlier in our chat. Understanding that your your perception is everything, and You telling yourself that you're not good enough is just a story that you're making up because you're afraid of failure or what might happen if you try. It's been a mega, mega learning experience for me over the past few years. And I think that if you're serious about starting a company, you have to understand that you're going to experience imposter syndrome. You're going to experience self doubt. You're going to experience anxiety and fear. And if you can't figure out how to overcome that and you can't figure out how to quiet those voices, and I'm not saying not to feel it, you have to feel it, you have to acknowledge it and then understand what is the reason that you're feeling this way. Is it because you have some work that you're intimidated by? Is it because you have a big presentation that you're afraid of messing up? Is it because you just closed the biggest account and you don't want to let them down? There's always going to be a source of this, but if you can, I should speak for myself, as I've figured out how to get to the root cause of what these feelings and emotions are coming from, I've learned to deal with them in a much better way, and that has made me way more effective because I now feel these fears or anxieties and I can stop and say, okay, yes, I feel this way. Is this actually true? No. I am good enough to do this. I can do this. I do know what I'm talking about. And I only feel this way because of this reason. It's a temporary feeling. And then I can I can acknowledge it and then let it pass and go back to work. And that mental battle happens every single day, multiple times a day. And that's probably back to talking about who's right for entrepreneurship. If you already have a handle on your emotions, if you already you have, a lot of self-confidence is fake. You see a lot of people posturing and pretending to be confident when they're deeply, deeply insecure. If you're truly comfortable with yourself, if you truly have self-confidence, if you do believe in yourself, you should start a company. You should. I think that that's one of the biggest things to overcome is, can you get up every morning and go and command a workforce and have the self-confidence to say, I don't know everything, but I know enough to delegate and to help, you know, help these people who are working for me do their best work, empower them, give them autonomy. It's a huge, huge aspect to it. So I think what you're talking about is extremely relevant and extremely real.
Yeah, I think confidence and love of the game are the two most important things because that leads to authenticity. Confidence, love of the game leads to you being authentic for what you're doing, and people will sniff out people can sniff out the bullshit, right? I think people have pretty good BS radars these days, and there's so many, like you mentioned here. I talk to a lot of different people on the pod, and when I do talk to them, I even say, you know what? Sometimes I think some coaches are a little bit full of some horse manure, a little bit here and there, because everyone can be a coach. Anyone can be a coach about something, right? And some people are a coach about this one specific thing, and they have this one size fits all method that works for them, but works for them, and then some, but not enough outside of that. And that's why they're limited in what they do. They're trying to find more of their specific niche. They're not coachable, and they think that their method is the end all be all of everything. You can scroll through Instagram and you see so many people, hey, do it this way, or hey, I did that, or hey, I did this kind of thing. It's like, great, I'm glad you did that. I feel like that's not repeatable and that's not sustainable, whatever you did, kind of thing. And the way you're marketing it's cool, it's flashy. I doubt it's actually going to work long term, kind of thing. And so it's one of those things where it's like you have to be confident, but like a quiet confidence, kind of like more of like a swagger. Like this dude's like he knows he's good, but he's not boastful about it, right? He's not going out of his way to show his confidence. His confidence shows in the conversations he has. His confidence shows in the way he carries himself. His confidence shows in his work when he explains something. He knows that what he says, he means what he says. How he says it is exactly what he means, and there's no gray area about that because he's so confident in the answer he's giving you. It's more of that confidence and kind of a swagger there. And then just love. If you don't love it, I don't think you're going to be successful. If you don't love it, you're not going to be successful. And that comes to starting every new thing, like starting a new podcast kind of thing. If you don't, or keeping a podcast going, this will be episode 244 when it comes out. You think I've loved every single day along the way of this show and haven't had to refine it? No, I've had to refine it many times. There's many times that I've considered putting the show letting it go into the sunset. Many. Uh, Heck, I just considering it last week as of this recording. Heck, earlier this week, trying to figure everything out.
I think what's important about what you're saying is it's not just loving the thing, it's loving building the infrastructure around this thing to allow it to continue. So there's a book that I love that I recommend a lot called The E-Myth, which is about building businesses. And, there's the example that's used throughout the book is, this woman was a baker and she loved baking, pies and whatever. And when it came time to actually scale the business, she wasn't able to, or it took her a long time to learn to be able to, because it's more than just baking. It's not just about loving the thing that you do. You also have to love the logistics around it, because a lot of people start companies because they like doing that thing. If you're a graphic designer, you start being a freelancer. There's a big difference between being a freelance graphic designer and starting a graphic design agency where you have other designers working for you, where you now have to send invoices, you now have to pay your employees or contractors, you now have to market yourself and manage your website and bookkeeping and all this stuff that has nothing to do with graphic design. So you can't just, and podcasting, perfect example, right? It's not just, showing up and recording. You have to edit, you have to do the graphic design, the thumbnails, you have to upload it, you have to market it. There's all this stuff that's around it that's not the same as just podcasting. So you need to really enjoy building the rails around the thing that you're doing, not just the actual thing.
Yeah, you have to love the process, not just the product. And this is true across the board with business and with kids. So I'm going to give this analogy here. You have to love the process, not just the product. You have to help your kids and yourself as a dad. You have to love the process that your kids are going through. You have to help them love the process, because the process is the biggest part here. The process is like you're saying here. That's the grind that we're talking about. The logistics, not just the thing you're doing. That's a product, but all the things in between. You have to find love for that. You have to have an interest. If you're not interested in it, you're gonna fail, because you got to have an interest in it. If you don't care, then why would you show up every day? Why would you push yourself to make money? Why would you push yourself to market it? It's difficult to do that if you don't care. You don't love the process. You just love the product. And so it's really easy to get all mixed up in there. And then on top of that, you look at for our kids, we very much as parents very easily will look at and be like, oh, good job, little Johnny. You got a B. Should have been an A, kind of thing. But let's look back at that process of that B. Let's say little Johnny was at a D or an F, and it took all that work just to get to a B, to go from a 60% to an 80% by turning in a bunch of late work, busting his butt to get caught up, and just trying to go out of his way because he knows he's getting docked on all these assignments. So he's putting in A quality work, but he's getting B's on it because that's all he can get because it's late, kind of thing. And he's busting his butt, but all you say is, well, you should have gotten an A. How defeating is that going to feel? Right? It's going to be the same in business. How defeating is that going to feel? Oh, well, instead of selling 50, you should have sold 55. It's like, oh, you missed your goal, kind of thing. Oh, well, you should have done better. Yeah, should have done better.
One of the
And
most
that's so discouraging and so disheartening.
Yeah. One of the most disheartening things that I experienced as a parent was seeing how quickly we start to set expectations for kids. I mean, it is immediate. It's how fast, how many ounces of milk can they drink? How many dirty diapers do they have in the day? It starts immediately. How fast can they get to stacking blocks and rolling over and pushing up and crawling? And that continues for all of life from day one. You go through that, to your point, to elementary school. Can you draw like a house or a human form quickly? Can how fast do you learn your ABCs and your numbers? And then it goes to ensuring that kids study as hard as possible so they can get into the best classes, so that they can get AP credit, so that they can go to the best schools, so that they can get the best jobs, so that they can get the best partner, so that they can have it's never ending. And it's crazy to me that it starts immediately. We put these unrealistic expectations on all humans from day one. And it's really, as a society, we're not doing our best to set our children up for success if that's all we're looking at.
Yeah, and I don't think we're setting up our boys either for very much success there either, because it sets up this cycle of, oh, whatever you do is never good enough. You need to do more, but even when you do more, it's still not good enough, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
keep doing more, but it's still not going to be good enough. You're going to be good. You're going to be like decent enough, but you're never going to be good enough. So you're always going to be missing the mark somehow, some way, in some area. I don't think that sets up for any success here. And that's just what it is. So It's unfortunate that that's kind of where we're at, and we gotta get away from that. We gotta get back to the process of everything. But kind of to shift gears here and talk about business. You brought up kind of the day to day, the logistics of everything, and one thing I wanted to bring up is what is the impact of like AI in what you do in marketing? Because I always love having these conversations and including AI in them. Because if you're not, I feel like if you're not using AI for whatever you're doing, you're falling behind. And that's just the reality of the world that we live in. Is that it's a highly powered AI world. I mean, ChatGPT is on model 4.5. I feel like I just started using it a year ago, and it was on 2. Now it's evolved like multiple times over. You can do research, deep research, get hundreds upon hundreds of different articles in one prompt, and it's crazy what you can do with it. But for you in marketing, what kind of impact, what kind of uses do you have for AI? How does it help you? Are there any specific AI platforms that you love when it comes to marketing? Because I know there's a few out there. I'll have to think of the name. Jasper AI, I think, is a marketing one that I've heard of. Of course, everyone knows GPT. Uh, so yeah, what's the role of it plays for you, and what platforms do you absolutely love for what you
Yeah,
do?
you'll be unsurprised to learn that I use AI extensively in most parts of my business, and I'm only using it more and more. First of all, on, like I talked about before, the logistics side of the business, not just the marketing, but creating job posts for new workers, putting together contract proposals, and just all of the collateral that I need to share with prospect and new clients. Um, I try not to use it for anything where my voice, like my tone of voice, needs to come through. Although there's a lot of people who swear by training their model on, writing snippets to have it produce content that sounds like what they do. I haven't done much of that yet, but I've heard that that can be effective. But then for the actual day to day of what I'm doing, I use it extensively. I mean, it's really unbelievable for organization and brainstorming. So I'll give you an example. When I work with brands, we're trying to come up with content. We approach it from an SEO perspective where we're looking at the keywords that their prospects and customers are going to be finding them through search. So, for me, somebody might Google for healthcare marketing and I want to show up. So I'm creating pillar topics around healthcare marketing, around physicians, MSOs, whatever, the individuals I'm selling to, the services I offer, the problems I'm solving, and then I'm creating buckets around the content. So am I presenting it as a checklist, to do guide, how to, a personal thing? And I put all of that, and I like to use Claude personally. That's the LLM of choice, but I use ChatGPT as well. And I'll say, here are my pillar topics. Here are the buckets, the way I want to present it, mix and match to come up with, as many topics as you can for content ideas. And that will give me a near limitless number of ideas. Now, that's not the end, right? I then need to translate that. I need to inject my experience. I need to make it more human. But to start with that versus even a few years ago where you would have to do all of that yourself, it is an unbelievable time saver. So all of the organization stuff around putting together brand documents for my clients and content production, SEO research, writing articles, that all has been incredibly helpful. The other side of the AI automation world that I think is not talked about enough, or rather it's like misunderstood to be AI when it's actually automation, is that whole workflow efficiency aspect of automation. So we use ClickUp, and we are introducing they have really great AI that's native in bots that are native in workflows, where if you are diligent about your project management and putting your tasks in there and assigning it and putting in priorities, you can ask the AI, where are we on this project? And it will give you an unbelievable summary. And so that's a tool that I'm starting to implement way more in my business. I have a team that's only focused on making ClickUp more effective, adding automations to it, creating AI agents that operate within it, so that when I talk to a prospect, I have a dossier on where we're at in the conversation, what we've talked about, what their pain points are, what I need to speak to, what services they're interested in. There's like a stand-up bot that will reach out to employees and say, hey, what have you worked on this week? Where are we at with these projects? Are you blocked? Do you need something from me? So that the workflow part is really what I'm more interested. I think that AI is unbelievable, and I've gotten a lot out of it, and I'll continue to use it, and it's only going to get more powerful. But I think that there is a misconception around AI being able to produce a final product, which I don't think it can. I think it still requires a huge amount of, especially on the creative side, I cannot just create something fully with AI and then publish it without looking at it. It requires a huge amount of editing, and we do a lot of graphic design. We try not to use AI images. And we do a lot of video production. So the AI is impressive, but it's not quite there. The automation just takes employees and me and just makes all of us so much more effective. And so, for article production, I've used this tool AirOps a lot. I'm using this product Gumloop. I'm experimenting with.
AI can't create the final product yet,
It can't create the
and
final
that's
product yet. It's not there yet, but it gets it to a point where you're way beyond where you might have been, and puts you in a position to do far more work and far better work because you're much farther along than you would have been otherwise.
absolutely. And I think some of it depends on what you're using it for. Some of it does require some minor editing, maybe interjecting your own tone, changing some language kind of things. But gosh, it gets you like 80% there sometimes, if not 90. It gets you 80 to 90% there to the final product, which is just crazy. Because it takes so much time out of it for you. And sometimes, yeah, it does get sometimes it hits and it's like, oh, that's exactly what was going for. And it hits and it's like you have very little work to do. Or sometimes you can just get lazy and you're like, good enough. But I think there's a lot of things to automate along the way with AI. There's a lot of things that you could take the guesswork out of when it comes to business. I mean, for work, for myself, I created my own GPT for my job. I was like, I need to do something. I need to create something specific for me because these answers are too generalized. Let me put all the information about my job, jobs that I work with, and let me put in different compliance things as well into this. Let me put all these documents into it. I fed into my own GPT, and I made my own that I use just for myself
Mm,
for work to make my job easier because I have to do a lot of documentation and the power to be able to go from when I'm having to type a whole note in documentation versus being able to copy and paste those elements and then paste in my recap of the session I had, and then it gives me everything else in a minute, and then just copy and paste it over. It saves me bukus amounts of time
yeah. And
and stress and energy.
that's one of the things I love about Claude because it's got that projects feature. So every client that I have has their own project tab. I upload all of their brand documents, the content strategy, the messaging strategy. I put together like a dossier on each one that has all of the information about the company, all the info from their website, and then anytime I'm creating assets for them or I'm asking questions or it's hyper relevant to that specific client.
Yeah, no, AI it's cool. It's cool, man, for how much it does. But yeah, okay. Well, we're getting towards the end here. I guess I just wanted to ask how did becoming a dad and fatherhood impact the way you approach, business and life in general? How does that change your like overall approach to just what you're doing?
Two major ways it's changed everything about me. The first way is that it helped me understand what's really important in life and what I'm doing this for. It helped really clarify for me. It's not just getting time. Like, I don't want to build a business so I can go, run off to a beach somewhere and be by myself and ignore responsibility. It's so that I can get more responsibility. It's so that I can take a more active role with my children, with my wife, and build this life that's rich. So that's the first one, is helping really help me understand what my priorities are. The second is it's just allowed me to approach everything with way more empathy. You don't really understand that the entire world is dependent on new people, on these children and good people, and raising them I was going to say raising them the right way. Who knows what the right way is, but raising them to not be jerks, raising them to try to be good people.
That's
And
the right way. That's the right way to raise good, productive members of society, wherever you live.
I don't want to phrase it as
You don't have to.
productive members of
Yeah,
society, but just members of society, people who can, sure, we want them to contribute. We don't want them to be, I don't want them to be deadbeats, but I want them to be happy. It drives me crazy when you go out into the world and your kids are a little disruptive and these people are glaring at you, or restaurant owners are frustrated. And it's like, dude, where do you think your employees come from? Where did you come from? Where do you think these customers came from? Like, we were all children. The entirety of our culture is dependent on people. being around to it just I don't know, it feels like it's a US thing, maybe it's a Northeast thing, but there's a level of frustration with children that is really disappointing that I see on a regular basis where it just there is this hypocrisy of wanting to be a member of society or own a business and not be patient with children who are going to inherit our world and hopefully make it better.
Yeah, no, 100%. There needs to come that. I think that's a great perspective to have here is where you have to realize that. And also, like you mentioned towards the top, right? We put a lot of expectations onto our kids very early, very quickly, and we expect a lot out of them. When we can expect the same things from some adults, and it still won't get done.
Yep.
And we're expecting that from a developing brain. Expecting that from a developing human being, and we don't. I don't think we think about that very often because it's like, oh well, we went through it, kind of thing. But yeah, did we struggle? Yeah, the struggle is part of it. But was it fair to us to have all those expectations placed on us as children? No, because that took away from us living our lives and took away from our childhood in general. And so I think that's a really difficult part here, and just a sad reality, unfortunately, that we put a lot on our kids. We put a lot on their plates. We have these high expectations in them to hit these certain milestones and markers and stuff like that are arbitrary. A lot of them made up um, for them to hit these certain milestones at these certain ages developmentally, and there's just expectations in all areas, developmentally, cognitively, physically, emotionally, all along the way that they quote unquote should be hitting. Not all our kids are going to be hitting those the same as they were 30, 40 years ago when these standards were developed, or a couple generations ago when they were all developed. And so I think that's just something to remember in all this is that it's not always what it's supposed to be, or what was isn't what is.
Amen.
All I got here. All right, any final thoughts, Jake? Before we jump into the dad zone,
Yep. I hear that.
can you hear me?
Yep. Hey,
Can you hear me?
I can.
We're good. Okay. Are you good? Ready to jump into the dad zone? Close us out here.
Let's get in the dad zone.
Let's do it. All right. Technical difficulties will not prevail today. They will not prevail. They will not. They will not win. So we're just gonna jump in. It is 4 fun questions to end us here to bring the mood up a little bit because the technical difficulties are being bogged down. So first question here in the dad zone: does pineapple go on pizza?
I'm gonna say absolutely yes. I'm a
Wow.
Hawaiian fan. I am. I think that people who don't like pineapple on pizza most of them are doing it to be trendy. I think any of them would like a brie with a jelly. There's something to that sweetness with the funkiness of cheese that I think that or the saltiness of ham that people want to pretend like isn't good to be part of the crowd. But I'm gonna say yes, Hawaiian.
Interesting. That's a different perspective from what I hear. I'll have to recommend you a pizza place since I know you're East
Everybody,
Coast
the vast majority of people want to pretend like it's a sin to put pineapple on pizza, and I'm gonna,
because it is.
well, I mean, that's what's the dude say? That's just like your opinion, man.
We're different people. We're different people. It's fine. It's fine. There is a pizza shop, a lady I interviewed on my podcast. Her name is Erica. Her family owns a pizza shop there in kind of your area. It's called D Arcs Pizza.
Okay.
You have to look it up, see if it's close to you, and go get a check that out. They do not have any Hawaiian pizza on their authentic Italian pizza
By
menu.
the way,
Just
just to
saying.
say, it doesn't have to be pineapple. You want to put pear and gorgonzola, you want to put, people are willing to experiment with different types of fruits and cheeses, but for some reason, pineapple has become super polarizing because it's a fun thing to pretend to dunk on us esoterics about. But I got to tell you, if you lighten up and you live your life a little bit, I think you'll find that it's pretty tasty.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, I do like a good charcuterie board. I do like a good charcuterie board.
That's what I'm
So
saying.
you're onto something here. You're onto something here. So regardless, speaking of charcuterie board, who are 3 people dead or alive that you would invite to a dinner party that, of course, you'll have a charcuterie board at?
Dead or alive. The first one I'll go with is um Noah Harari. Paul Noah Harari. He wrote Sapiens and many other books, and I'm a big fan of his. Next, I'll go with Levon Helm, one of my favorite musicians who just lived through one of the most incredible musical times, in my opinion, in history, and one of my favorite musicians. And then, who's the last one? I'd really like to get dinner with Robin Williams. He was pretty significant to my childhood, and I miss him, and I wish he was still alive. So I'd love to hang with him a bit.
That's a great 3. Lastly, what is your guilty pleasure food?
Oh man, I got a major sweet tooth. Just a milkshake, an Oreo milkshake, or that's just, I will suck those down.
Yep. And now you're going to be thinking about an Oreo milkshake all day from bringing it up.
No,
And so you're going to go get one at some point today. I can already tell you that's what
that
happens here.
it's that and a
I hear
pineapple
that.
pizza.
I hear that more than anything. It's like, man, I was thinking about my guilty pleasure food, whatever I said. I was thinking about the pineapple pizza, and I went and got some later that day. When I rap back to them, I'm like, I knew it every time. Very last question here before we wrap up. What is just one singular piece of advice that you would offer to a young dad? Let's say he's about 18 to 22 years old, just starting out his fatherhood journey. One piece of advice for him.
We have been raising children as a species for between 50, 70,000 years, and currently there's so much information. There's hundreds of thousands of TikToks and Instagram reels. There's baby books. There's classes. There's so much information that people are going to tell you. And much of it is very good. But what I'm here to tell you is that so much of this is inherent in you. It's in your evolution, in your biology. Nobody's going to know your children the way that you know them. You need to trust your gut. You're going to be okay. And just if you sense that something's off, follow that thread, because you're probably, don't rely. I'm not saying don't rely on doctors. You have to obviously rely on doctors. What I'm saying though is that you bring your child to the pediatrician, especially as they get a little bit older, once a year, unless they're sick, right? You see them every single day. You understand them in a way that nobody else can. So just keep that in mind. Just remember that it's innate to our species, and you've got what it takes to be a good parent.
Love that. 100%. All right. Well, Jake, this has been a great conversation. Your insights, business, fatherhood, work-life balance are exactly what I think a lot of entrepreneurs and young dads, especially who are thinking about this, need to hear. For listeners who want to connect with you, follow your journey, work with you possibly.
You can get me at my company website, patientprocure.com. I'm on Instagram quite a bit. I think it's just Jake Sucoff. You can find me there, and I'm happy to trade some DMs and happy to help wherever I can.
Absolutely, man. Well, to all our listeners, if our episode resonated with you, gave you fresh business insights, or made you rethink work-life balance, share it with someone who also needs to hear it. And until next time, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, stay connected for more raw, impactful conversations, and keep leading your family with purpose and passion. We'll see you right here next time on the Young Dad Podcast.